Keep on riding with us as we continue to broadcast the balance and defend the discourse from the Hip Hop Weekly Studios. Welcome back to Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
He is Ramses Ja. I am Q Ward. You are tuned in to Civic Cipher.
And we have some more show for you, so we want you to stick around. Jasmine Crockett was in the news, and she kind of let a little bit of, let the cat out of the bag that Democratic donors are lining up behind a candidate for 2028, and she says that they selected the safest white boy. And the implications of that decision, I think, can be kind of troubling. So we're going to examine the results of the past couple of elections that were run by women, and hopefully make a case that women still have a place at the top of the political ticket moving forward. So stay tuned for that and so much more. But before we get there, it's time to BA, become a better ally, Baba. And today's Baba comes from urbanintellectuals.com. Urban Intellectuals is proud to present Volume 1 of the Black History flashcards designed to combat the miseducation and suppression of Black achievements around the globe. This volume's 52 cards give a strong foundation to the many untold stories, achievements, and unknown people that have given shape, color, and definition to the worlds of academia, science, and civil rights, as well as business, the arts, and more. Enjoy learning about the revolutionary contributions of Black people. Take pleasure in sharing all that you learn with friends, educators, and most importantly, our youth. It is imperative that they understand Black history, become inspired, and take action to build their own greatness. Those who know their history are destined to repeat it, so let's share the true story of Black history. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about these flashcards. Okay, first off, they're $25, and they're worth it. Second of all, in a time where teaching the unique story of Black people in this country, because Black people's story is very unique. There's certainly American history, but if you say American history, oftentimes it doesn't quite drift over into Black people's unique path through this country to today. And there are a lot of things that happened along the way that people need to understand so that we don't repeat them, so that we can honor the people that have given, in many cases, their lives to get us here. This is one way that you can go about doing that, making it fun. They're flashcards, so they're pretty quick. They're great for attention spans for young people. They're affordable, and if they're not, you can make payments. And they have a no-risk money-back guarantee as well. Again, check urbanintellectuals.com. The flashcards are highly recommended. They're great quality, beautiful colors. I promise you need these in your life. All right. Now, Jasmine Crockett I'd call her a friend of the show, but she's a dear friend of the show. Jasmine Crockett is one of our great sheroes. And I won't say that Jasmine Crockett is not telling the truth, but I do want to talk to people because, so in this conversation, it may be the case that I will make a plea to you, our listener, so that you can continue to put pressure on your elected representatives, continue to champion women, and so forth. And Q, if you so choose, you can play the role of the realist, which is often the role that you play anyway, and I'm the optimist.
I don't think we're playing roles. I don't want to give the audience that impression.
Okay. Then we'll play it as it lies. How about that? But I think that there's something here that we should be mindful of. In the conversation since the last election, knowing that the last two women that ran for president lost to Donald Trump, and the man that ran against Donald Trump did win against him. You have a very simple formula that could suggest that women are not viable presidential candidates, right? And I think that simple formula is dangerous because that conversation requires a lot more nuance. There's a lot more to look at in terms of the why. There's a lot, and we'll get to that in just a second. But before we get there, I'm going to share the words of Jasmine Crockett just to kind of help paint the picture, and then we'll go from there. All right. This is from the Black Information Network. Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett has revealed that Democratic donors are already eyeing the safest white boy as the party's presidential nominee. During a recent radio appearance, Crockett discussed the future of the Democratic Party following Vice President Kamala Harris's loss to now President Trump in the 2024 election, per The Independent. The Texas lawmakers said Democratic donors are eyeing a white man to represent the party in 2028, since the previous women candidates like Harris and Hillary Clinton have been unsuccessful in their bids for the White House. Quote, it's this fear that the people within the party, within the primary system, will have about voting for a woman because every time we voted for a woman, we've lost so far, Crockett said. She goes on to say, I think that that's a natural fear because we just want to win. So there's a lot of people that are like, you know what? Like, let's go find the safest white boy we can find. I mean, I'm just saying. The Democratic Congresswoman noted that major donors were excited about one specific candidate. Quote, I had a donor on the phones with me telling me that all the donors are lining up behind that candidate. So I can tell you it's not a black person nor a woman. So they have, quote unquote, they have chosen. When I say they, it's the same donors that most likely had their opinions about Joe Biden and moved. So like, that would be the they that I would talk about, unquote. Crockett declined to reveal the candidate's identity. There are several 2028 frontrunners for the Democratic presidential nominee that align with Crockett's comments, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Okay. Now, so far, everything that we've stated is factual, and I want to keep the conversation as factual as possible. Before I jump off, do you have anything that you want to state here, or do you want to go first at all?
I think it would make more sense for you to state your position first.
Okay.
So I don't think mine is as contrary to yours as you believe. And
yeah, no. I don't think yours is contrary at all. Yeah. I know that it plays better because you kind of give some. There's just a separate voice in the room. You know what I mean? But and I know that you don't disagree. It just helps flesh out the argument for the sake of, the show. But here's the problem with these Democratic donors lining up behind the safest white boy. If they want to win, that's all well and good. But I think examining why they lost more critically, more thoroughly, you might find that it's not as simple as, oh, well, she was a woman, so that's why she didn't win. Any more than you could say that about Hillary Clinton. I believe it is possible for a woman to win the presidency of the United States. And clearly, I believe it's possible for a woman to lose the presidency of the United States, just the same as it's possible for a man to win the presidency of the United States. And indeed, it is possible for a man to lose the presidency of the United States. All the presidencies, all the presidential campaigns that have ever existed, there was a man that lost. Okay, so men lose too. The Democrats didn't lose two in a row, but they did lose two. There were two women that lost in a row. Now, I could argue that for the first presidential election against Donald Trump back in 2016, Hillary Clinton, Democrats, maybe they underestimated the monster that Donald Trump was. The monster in terms of the numbers and the support that he had, but also, the monster. But I think that there's another element. There's another layer here too. I think that Democrats may have been feeling invincible, not just insofar as Donald Trump is concerned, but I think that what Democrats did to Bernie Sanders in the 11th hour, which ultimately secured Hillary Clinton's nomination for the Democratic frontrunner for president in 2016, that felt deceptive, and it felt like what's the word I'm looking for? Like cheating, and cheating the voters and cheat. You know what I mean? Like it felt like I'm not thinking of the right word, but it felt like underhanded. And I think that the arrogance of the Democratic Party back then, making a move like that, caused a lot of people to say, you know what? A lot of people that were excited about Bernie Sanders to say, you know what? I finally found somebody that was listening to me. We're trying to pull this country in a direction that's decidedly more kind, that's more thoughtful, that cares about people. Where you know Bernie Sanders famously is trying to get health care for everybody, lower drug prices, you know, tax billionaires accordingly, you know, put more funding into social services, and just kind of improve the quality of life for everyone, not just billionaires, but everyone. You know, and there were a lot of people that really liked that idea. And Hillary Clinton represented kind of a more or less more of the same. And all the people that were super excited about Bernie Sanders, they just kind of got left out, you know, by the wayside. Now, there are still people that voted for Hillary Clinton. She won the popular vote. And I think that that makes a case that this country will still vote for a woman. But there are people that were disillusioned by that. Couple that with the fact that Donald Trump was something that no one expected back at that time. You have the result that you ended up with. But again, I think that her winning the popular vote back in 2016 illustrates the fact that women are viable presidential candidates, that maybe the strategy wasn't the right way. Maybe, you know, what they did at that time wasn't the right thing to do. Maybe Trump was just something that no one could have prepared for. But that doesn't mean that Hillary was not viable because she was a woman. Okay. Now, the other half of this argument, of course, is Kamala Harris. And, you know, famously, she was unsuccessful at her bid for the presidency. But Kamala Harris got the nomination well after she should have. And it was directly handed to her. The voters didn't get a chance to, there was not a robust primary, you know what I mean? They were just kind of like, Joe Biden is staying longer than he promised that he would in the office. And then at the last minute, he's like, okay, fine, I won't run. This is the person I want to take over after me. And then that's what everyone was stuck with, right? So people that wouldn't have preferred her, people that might have wanted a Buttigieg or a Bernie Sanders or whatever, didn't get the opportunity. So she's starting late in the game under a set of circumstances that, you know, maybe she wouldn't have asked for, you know, but she was the candidate. And the backdrop of, you know, our political, I guess the political backdrop of the country at the time, you know, there were attacks on the border, a lot of attacks on the border. There were attacks on, you know, trans people, and there still are. And, you know, Democrats were vulnerable to attacks from activists and people that were very concerned about what was going on in Gaza. That commanded a huge amount of the bandwidth on social media, and people had made up their minds that unless these people condemn this war and stop funding genocide and all that sort of stuff, that Joe Biden wasn't going to get their vote. And by extension, Kamala Harris wasn't going to get their vote, right? So here we have a lot of things. Again, the border, we got, you know, all these vulnerabilities for Democrats. And the Democrats did, you know, hindsight's 2020, and I'm not a political strategist, but I'm making a point that the strategy or lack thereof played a bigger role than the fact that it was a woman, okay? The Democrats have, you know, I said on a recent episode on the Black Information Network, talking to Q about the very same thing that we're talking about now, that the Democrats did not do a good job of picking a side. They were kind of trying to play the middle. That was Joe Biden and then later Kamala Harris, right? And that was the play that they wanted to run, and that could very well have been the right play. But one fundamental truth is that when you play the middle, you're now vulnerable to attacks from both sides. and you need people to vote for you from your base, but you also need people to, from the independents and the people that wouldn't have voted for Trump, right? But I think the Democrats maybe underestimated how important that the war in Gaza was, and their stance on it, and their funding the war on the Gazans. And again, the border, with Kamala Harris being labeled the border czar, quote unquote, Trump taking the border deal and them not making a big enough deal about that. Like, yo, the reason we don't have a more secure border is because of Donald Trump, because he wants to campaign, because he needs a weak border to scare you, the voter, into voting for him. But we already have a plan in place that is a bipartisan effort. They didn't do a great job of messaging, right? And this was under Joe Biden's time, not Kamala Harris's campaign time, that they could have, messaged that quite a bit better. But anyway, these vulnerabilities, I believe, were based, or rather, the vulnerabilities of the Democratic Party were based on things that we saw happening in real time. We talked about on the show. We talked to Q, and I certainly talked about them in private, and we talked about it with the actual Democrats, right? And to have now the Democratic donors look at a simplification of that formula. Well, we ran 2 women. They both lost, so women are not viable. I think that is very damaging to women in general in politics, especially wanting to pursue the highest office in the land, and on both sides of the aisle. Because if this is the narrative that gets chronicled about this time in our life, 2016 and 2024, Republicans would look at that too and say, yeah, we don't need to run a woman because women are not, the country doesn't want to vote for a woman. And I think that just the fact that Hillary Clinton secured the popular vote in 2016 shows that the country, most people are perfectly fine with voting for a woman. Now, a lot of people are fans of Donald Trump for whatever reason. But the fact, I just don't see the woman part of it being something that's prohibitive. And the only way rather that women don't get to participate at that level of politics moving forward is if this is the version of the story that we choose to tell ourselves, this very simple version of the story. Well, that's like, we ran, if in an alternative universe, if Barack Obama would have lost his election, imagine for the following 50 years, people look, oh, remember we ran that one guy, Barack Obama, and he lost? So black people don't win elections. See, that's like, we know Barack won, but you see how that's the wrong way to approach that. So this is kind of what I'm thinking about this. Again, Jasmine hasn't said anything wrong, and I know that you're agreeing with me, Q, but I worry that if we let them chronicle this version of the story, then we're doing a disservice to a lot of really brilliant, even-tempered women who really do have what it takes to, get us back right. And the truth of the matter is that it's been black women in this country that have saved us from ourselves many times throughout this country's history. And for this version of the story to be chronicled feels a little scary, and it feels like we're kind of like, what is the saying when you chop off your nose to spite your face or something? Maybe that's how it feels. So your thoughts?
Well, first of all, very, very well put. I do want to point out some things, though, that I think in listening to our sister's message, you might have taken and made a turn that she didn't make. Mm-hmm. The viability of women as candidates was never questioned.
Yeah, she never said that. That's fair. Yeah.
So the position that we just took several minutes defending or explaining the opposite.
Yeah, that's more the donors than her.
Made.
Yeah.
What they're saying is that we live in a anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-people of color country. So it's more likely we'll win if the person running is white. That is not to the viability of people of color or women or gay people. Mm-hmm. I actually think the candidate that I'm most excited about is a gay man, who I think would by far be the best candidate that we could produce. However, to the conversation that we're having, the only 2 women to ever make the top of the ticket lost to the least qualified candidate that's ever run for president.
Yeah, and that's a fair point.
Not because they weren't good enough or smart enough. They were actually not just more qualified than him. They may have been more qualified than everyone else who's ever run.
Yeah.
They didn't lose for bad messaging or bad policy. Again, the person on the other side of the ticket was Donald Trump. In the case where apathy played such a huge role in this most recent election, Donald Trump argued the opposite point of the people who stayed home. The man said out loud on record, I want Netanyahu to finish the job. I want him to wipe your people out. And then we can go build golf clubs and resorts. Mm-hmm. She's still saying out loud he plans to do. So I think we give people who have shown us that they're anti-woman and anti-LGBTQ and anti-immigrant and anti-Black a pass when we say that that's not true about them. It's absolutely true about them. The only way you explain those two women losing is that Hillary Clinton's emails were a problem. Kamala's position was too center when the other guy's saying destroy it all. The only way you find those reasons to disqualify them is when you've already decided you're not going to vote for them. So you just need something to point to. You said men can lose an election. Well, of course, if there's only two people running and one of them is a man, then by nature, someone has to lose. Mm-hmm. So, the argument that men can lose an election, anybody can lose, but women have never won. But it's never about their qualifications or their viability. They're probably, just based on evidence and data and our eyes working, far more qualified to do this job than we are. Everything would show it. The level that they're educated, raising families alone, healthcare and education for everyone didn't happen because they thought Black people would have access to it.
Yeah. Well, I know we got a long road ahead, but I think that you would join me in saying that at least remembering that women are viable candidates and impressing that onto our elected representatives at every level of government is how we can show up for women, because you never know when we might need them. So we'll leave it all right there.
And just before we go, we weren't less racist when Barack won.
Yeah,
he ran anyway and he won. So yeah, definitely keep running.
Yeah.
Help us tear this thing down. But
yes, there it is.
Again, the viability of women is not what was at question. It was our country's desire and ability to vote for and elect them.
Well, half of the country. But your point is well made. So we'll leave it right there. And thank you for tuning in to Civic Cipher. I have been your host, Ramses Ja.
I am Q Ward. Thank you guys for tuning in once again to Civic Cipher.
And be sure to follow us on all platforms at Civic Cipher. You can download this and any previous episode at civiccipher.com. And until next week, y'all.
Peace.